Welcome to our broadcast. Tonight we'll take a look at two of the trials that have become America's obsessions, the Menendez brothers case and the Bobbitt case. Also, actor Jason Robards will be here. He's featured in Jonathan Demme's film Philadelphia. And Wilma Mankiller will join us. She is the principal chief of the Cherokee Nation, the country's second largest Native American tribe. We begin with courtroom TV. The whole country's gone court crazy with the televising of the two very salacious trials. First, the Menendez trial out in California, now in jury deliberation, and then the Bobbitt trial in Virginia, where Lorena Bobbitt, well, everyone knows what she did. Many say that trials on TV have become our new soap operas. But is tragic reality really fit material for idle entertainment? With me is the man who made these legal wars living room wars, Stephen Brill. He's the founder of Court TV. He's editor-in-chief of The American Lawyer. Susan Lehman, an attorney, is a writer for Mirabella Magazine. And Jonathan Alter, media critic for Newsweek Magazine, joins us to talk about what in the world is going on in our culture when we've become so obsessed by trials. I said to you before this, I don't know if it's any different. Why are you smiling? Is it any different?
You don't even have to say Bobbitt yet, and it's already a laugh. Right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, David Letterman and Leno and everybody is having fun with this. But I want to talk about, one, the cultural aspects of it. I mean, the notion of our obsession with it. At the same time, I want to talk about Court TV and what you find from it, and also look at this trial in terms of what's going on and what is it symbolic of. Tell me how you see the trial and what's taking place there.
Well, I am very involved. Was very involved with the Menendez trial and followed
Obsessed
it very
by it.
closely. Okay, I was obsessed by it. The Bobbitt trial really doesn't interest me, and I actually think that the coverage is slightly embarrassing. That CNN, the premier news gathering organization, or one of them in the
Would break
world,
away from the president in
is
Russia.
emptying their airwaves to broadcast that trial seems odd to me.
You agree, Steve?
Oh yeah.
Did it?
For us, it's a relatively low priority trial, and I am, amazed that CNN is covering it as much, if not more, than we are.
Yeah, but it's not just CNN. The network newses are covering it every day. They've all got reporters on the scene.
I think it is not, to use your words, it is not idle entertainment. And what we try to do is take trials, some trials that are in very high public profile, and make them mean something, and use them to explain how the system works, and use them to get people to watch Court TV, obviously. But once they're watching, we try to make something of them. But I don't think that trial, which is a 4 or 5
wait, hold on. Let me have that in first, Jonathan.
I don't.
Are you telling me?
I'm going to speak slowly, so you will have less time to
Are
get
you
me.
telling me that you have no interest in attracting viewers to Court TV, and you don't know that the Bobbitt case will do that for Court TV?
Even though I don't run a nonprofit organization, I have the same interest you have in attracting viewers. You try to do interesting shows with interesting people that people have heard of.
Right.
When we do trials, we try, where we can, to do trials that involve issues and involve people that people have heard of. What I always say is, if we're going to do an intellectual property case, I would love it to be someone who is suing Paul Newman for the creation of the formula for the salad dressing recipe.
Or Art Buchwald or whoever.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that we don't have other interests, just the way you do.
Done.
Well, I think that's fine. I mean, the problem with the Bobbitt case was this one moment on CNN. I think it's now a modern classic, where the Bobbitt trial is going on, and they have a crawl line underneath that says, President Kravchuk of the Ukraine today renounced the use of nuclear weapons.
Stupid little thing about nuclear weapons. I think that
just a little tiny
Their
story.
supers were lagging behind their pictures.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, we originally had planned not even to do this live, because what was originally scheduled was the trial in Pensacola of the man who shot the abortion doctor, and his defense was going to be that he had to do it to stop all the killings. In other words, this was going to be a trial about abortion in front of a jury. That's been postponed for a month, so this became our only live candidate for this week. But I will tell you, if we could be in Waco, Texas today doing the
but you can't, because it's a federal trial.
Yeah, we'd be there. I mean,
No, this is a great trial.
I agree with you. See, I think it's a great trial.
I mean, if you get into a cab, you talk to anybody, people want to hear about
very
this.
little of it, I must tell you.
Okay, but that's possible. I mean, everybody can have different tastes, but I think that there's enormous curiosity on this trial.
It brings out the 4-year-old in everybody. I mean, you just mention the P word, and it's like, I have a 4-year-old at home. They start giggling. If you're an adult, you start giggling. It's funny, and you can try to say it's sad. It's a there's a medical story here
Yeah,
or something, but
John, that
it's a
brings up an
funny
interesting
story and
issue,
people
though.
like it.
We had some debate
But I don't view it as
yesterday.
circus. I mean, I also view it as a serious trial.
Yeah,
No
well, we
real
had-
questions being
Bobbitt
raised
seems
here.
like
We
a
had some-
wonderful tabloid story. I don't think it presents new issues. I don't think.
Oh, it
I mean,
does. It actually does. There's one issue it
I
presents.
mean, in the way that
it's like the
Menendez
Reginald Denny
really
case, and
moves
it's
the
like
battered
Menendez.
woman's defense to a new realm.
No,
the
they
law
all
is going
present-
somewhere it hasn't
It's the
been
same-
before.
If you look at the last 3
Bobbitt is
high-profile
women's
cases we've
self-defense
done,
again, in more dramatic form.
we've done recently, we've done the Reginald Denny case, Menendez brothers, now Bobbitt. We didn't plan it this way, but there's a theme in all 3 of those cases, and that is a theme that everybody is talking about in a very serious way in this country, and that is
Victimization as a defense.
responsibility for violence. I mean, because the defenses in each of those cases were, well, I did
I'm
this
a victim
really
myself.
terrible, violent thing, but there's a really good reason why I did this really terrible, violent thing. And that's a very hard issue for a jury to deal with. And the Bobbitt case, which is funny, but I'll tell you when it stops being funny. We had a big debate in our newsroom yesterday about whether to show the pictures. There are pictures of the crime.
Right.
And the crime
They're
scene,
pictures,
if you will.
the doctor had these pictures, which he took
Very
at the beginning,
large,
before.
explicit,
yeah.
bloody, terrible,
Right.
horrible pictures. And there was a pretty strong sentiment in our newsroom that we should show them. And the reason people wanted to show them was that to show that this isn't so funny, that something really bad happened here. And I decided not to show them. But if you look at them, you stop laughing.
Well,
Why
I
did
find
you
this
decide not
intriguing.
to
Let me tell you why I find it intriguing. Not only because of the nature of the crime, which
It's
is
just
so,
too sleazy to show.
you know, there are other kinds of examples of so much of what is represented here. But I mean, it seems to me that this trial has brought home a lot of particular issues. It is also interesting to me because the prosecutor prosecuting her formerly prosecuted him. Yeah. I mean, what kind of issues does that raise with respect to
Lots
it?
of them. And there's another issue that people, if she gets acquitted and he got acquitted, most people will say, well, how can that be? Mm-hmm. And the answer is there is some space in between those 2 acquittals, because to convict someone, you have to prove someone guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. You don't have to decide that the other person was right. You simply have to decide there's not enough proof to put that person in jail.
Has she become a symbol for feminism? Is she a heroine for many people, you think,
Sure,
within
I heard
the
on
feminist
Court TV
community?
This morning, the anchor said that she was, this case delivered a wake-up call to American feminists. And in some sense, because as Jonathan said, this case strikes obvious nerves. She fits right into
I
it.
think that's a pathetic, if that's true of American feminism, it's pathetic, because basically what that's saying is that because men have abused women over the years, in the case of some African cultures, you actually have genital mutilation. Right. Therefore, it's just desserts or worthy revenge to do it to men, and so we've kind of elevated revenge into some sort of feminist principle or something.
Violence.
And the thing that
people
unifies
say that
these
about
2 cases, and this is a semi-serious point, although I still think that the comic dimension is what is the only reason we're
What's
here.
the comic dimension? The fact that there are all kinds of, there's a circus atmosphere at the trial, and there are 14 satellite trucks, and there are all kinds of
Well, start with his
T-shirts
name.
taken to the extreme.
If his name was, Stephen Brill, we probably wouldn't be sitting here.
John Wayne
John
Bobbitt does it.
Wayne.
Well,
John Wayne.
I can promise
American
you we wouldn't be
icon.
covering that trial. Maybe Stephen Brill.
American icon, John Wayne. Bobbitt. It's like Buttafuoco. The name just jumps out at you. It's a laugh line in
But
itself.
does this trial
But
have
the-
more enduring curiosity?
Well, I
Go
do
ahead.
think that, I think the semi-serious point is that the Menendez case and the Bobbitt case are unified by this notion that somehow you have no personal responsibility to
that's what I like
refrain from
about it.
violence. Why didn't the Menendez brothers leave? They'd grown up. They should have left the house if they were being abused. If she was being kicked around by her husband in the Bobbitt case, as apparently she was, she should have left. And this seems to me to be so obvious. And one of the things that's fascinating to me about the case is you see these mock juries that are set up by Court TV and other people who are actually sympathizing with the action taken by the
you don't
Menendez
just see
brothers,
it in mock juries.
sympathizing with
Well, we may have a
Lena
deadlocked
Bobbitt.
jury.
Telephone. First of all, you see it in the real jury, apparently in the Menendez case, and the telephone. We get telephone calls. I mean, I would say of half the telephone calls we get about the Menendez trial, and we get a lot of them, are, how do I get their address? I want to write to them and express my support. And they are people who think these kids should get the Nobel Prize. And by the way, we've all made a mistake or most of us have in even this discussion, which is we've assumed that they were abused. And there's no reason to think they were abused, except that they claim it about their dead parents who aren't around to defend themselves.
Let me just mention that in our monitor here, we are having a live telecast from the court TV, and this trial is taking place. There is Lorena's former client who claims she saw bruises on the defendant testifying. Lorena Bobbitt, as we tape this, is supposed to testify
I guess
today.
Court TV's word for customer at a beauty parlor?
I think so, a former manicure client.
I think we have to
Lorena.
talk to our Chiron writer about that.
All right.
Their defense, too, were they wearing these sweaters in the Menendez case, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, the sweater defense is so pathetic to me. It didn't work for Jimmy Carter when he was trying to soften his image. It didn't work for Dan Rather when he was trying to soften his image. And I can't for the life of me understand why it should work for the Menendez brothers. They're killers. If nothing else, the killing of the mother is totally, completely unjustified. And I don't understand why the jury was out longer than 15 minutes.
I don't understand. Tell me why Menendez is fascinating to you. Forget any comparison with Bobbitt. Why is it so fascinating as a trial that it compels your attention? And when you had certain jury summaries taking place by certain attorneys, anybody who called you, you immediately hung up and said, "I cannot talk now. This is too riveting."
Stephen Brills, I think you know.
Stephen, did you call her?
Leslie
Did you call her up
Abrams
and say?
was doing her summation.
Yeah,
And I
and
thought,
who
of
was
all
doing her
the people to call me that.
Yeah.
I think it was fascinating because it offered these incredible details of maybe abuse, cheating at Monopoly, driving cars quickly, shooting people, killing them. You know, just really a rich array of stuff like that. But in addition, it was very much, I thought, like the Anita Hill, Clarence Thomas debates, in that you changed your opinion on what was going on depending on the information piling up. So that one minute it was perfectly clear that one story was true, and the next minute it wasn't. You know,
That's what
you got the
happens in
idea.
any trial.
Yeah.
That's what's great about trials. as
One thing
television.
that's terrific about this trial is that it does seem, you know, a lot of people think that agree with Jonathan that this is an open and shut case, and I think that what the court TV television does is dramatize that it may
puts you in
seem
the jury
open and
box.
shut, but only one juror
Yeah, that's
is
what it does.
needed to say,
Actually
hey,
cut
no.
and dried.
Well, I will tell you though, I mean, their defense is that they were so crazed by this alleged abuse that they couldn't make the rational judgment that you just made, which is, why don't we leave? I mean, I'm trying to predict for you what a juror who's voting for
Of course, but
not
to
guilty
me,
would say.
to me,
I
that
don't
is
agree
a
with it.
larger sign, and several of these cases
I
are. And I'm
agree
not
with you.
trying to
It's
attach too much
terrible.
importance
It's a-
to it, because I do think basically it's in the realm of circus, in the way we've had trial circuses in this country for generations. But the larger issue is a kind of an abdication of personal responsibility, that somehow I'm not responsible for my actions, and it's infesting the whole culture.
Denny case, they presented a sociologist who talked about what it's like to get caught up in the mob. So, whereas rioting used to be a crime, rioting became a defense, which is, I was just going with the flow here.
But that's a little bit different than it seems to me. Saying got caught up in mob rule, and I got caught up in the notion of being pushed forward by the mob to, in fact, take the actions
brick
that
and
both of these people have done, Menendez and. Yeah, but let me just raise this other question about the trial. What do you think's coming out of the coverage of these trials and other trials?
Well,
I mean, have you found out with Court TV, as you've gained more audience, and people who, when you first started, said this is the stupidest idea I've ever heard, because they didn't think anybody, most people who knew what trials were about said they're too long and laborious, and there's too much objecting and rules that would make a trial uninteresting. It's not Perry Mason, and it's not like so many films we've seen in which have been dramatic, Few Good Men, dramatic courtroom testimony. Despite that, you've had success with it, and more people are drawn to Court TV. What is it?
I think it's a couple things. First of all, it's not quite the circus that John says it is. It may seem like a circus outside the courtroom, but inside it's the governmental process. And I think people really want to see news that is unfiltered, just the way there's an argument that people wanted to see the presidential candidates talking in a way that other people weren't.
So you're the C-SPAN of court,
yeah,
the judicial system.
and I think people want to see that, and to the extent that they see that in a context where it's a good story, it makes it much more palatable. The reason it's working, frankly, is that it's bad television. The sound isn't very good.
So it
the
has a
lines
gritty
aren't
reality
very
like
good.
Cops does?
Yeah, and it's terribly believable. But unlike Cops, the reason it's believable is that it's real. I mean, you're not making that stuff up. And I think that's the first reason it works. The second reason it works is that as it happens, I mean, and you can't really sit and plan it this way, it does deal with every single issue that is on the front burner of the country's consciousness, whether it's Rodney King or this issue of personal responsibility or abortion or civil rights
There's your cover story
anything else.
Newsweek, isn't it? Personal responsibility and what's going on here?
Yeah, the problem is that personal responsibility and other kind of high-minded concepts, I'm just being
Don't
honest
work as a
here,
cover.
They don't work in any of the coverage. So you end up going to the more salacious, juicy dimensions to the story.
Speaking of that, is this a trial, the Bobbitt trial, where men and women are taking predictable sides?
I'm kind of suspecting. I've started to look around our newsroom, and I think I see a little bit of that, of predictable sides. I mean, I'm surprised at that there's a polarity.
But
of
it has
opinion.
for people who say that all sense of humor is
But there's-
left.
but there's all an undercurrent of humor.
Yeah,
in
water
this.
fountain dialogue. There is an undercurrent of humor. It does. I was about to say cut to some issues. The problem is you can't talk about
It's also
any of this.
I mean, part of it's depressing because they're not very appealing people. I mean, I was floored in the part I was listening to yesterday. I almost fell out of my chair. One of his friends was testifying that when he came over to Bobbitt's house, what did he bring with him? He brought his this and this and his Game Boy. This is a 22, 23-year-old kid, right? Well, my 11-year-old has outgrown Game Boy, and my 9-year-old's on the verge.
I think you're raising
I couldn't believe it.
What's interesting to me is both of these two people, to look at them on television, are attractive physically. Yet when you read about them, I mean, hasn't she had some criminal things been accused of some criminal things before, shoplifting or something?
not-
Is that not proven? Is that not
No,
true?
no, I
Is
mean,
it
but
not fair?
these are
Or
not
should-
the most appealing people in
Yeah.
the world.
And when you
get
read about
past
the marriage, and you read about what he was like, and you read about what she was like, and all of this kind of stuff. I mean,
They all belong in a penal colony.
yeah. They belong.
And
They're-
the lawyers aren't that terrific either. I mean, what you have in the Menendez case are
Good lawyers.
some very good lawyers, and people listen. If you don't get anything else out of this, people understand finally in this country, unlike watching Dirty Harry or Cops or even L.A. Law, that there are constitutional protections. There's a burden of proof that these procedures sometimes make sense. Sometimes they're very frustrating, but they understand how they.
If you had to predict, what's your gut feeling about what this jury will do?
in Bobbitt, I haven't watched enough, but I think they're going to acquit her. I really do. I think the testimony yesterday, such as
It
I
was so
heard
devastating
about
against
it,
him, wasn't it?
I think they're going to acquit her, and then I think we're going to have a very constructive time explaining how they could have acquitted her and him at the same time.
Susan?
I agree
instinct.
with that, and I'm curious about whether they're going to retry Menendez. What do you think about that?
You
It'd
know,
certainly
I
be
haven't
good for
given
you.
up yet.
In
No, it wouldn't
Menendez,
be
you
good
hate
for
the
us.
idea of
I
big
pray that they
legal.
don't retry
You hate the idea of
Hold on
big
one second.
legal fees
Yeah.
normally in American society, but in the Menendez case, it's great because they've made these killers spend all their money, and now they're not going to be able to put on as fancy a trial the second time because they're out of money.
No, they will put on a fancy trial a second time. If
Thank
they
you
have-
all. The trials continue.